Good. So welcome, my brother.
Yeah.
This really has been a long time coming. I think this is one of the chats that I've been looking forward to having for
Mm,
all four sorts of reasons. And I think the very first one for me is the fact that you are one person that I have observed your work from many miles away. And it just happened that I think we all found ourselves in the UK and we ended up working for two institutions that somehow converge as well. So that whole process of bringing us together, I think, is what I felt it will really be a good moment for us to start having these conversations because I think we bring a certain perspective to the issue of career, to the issue of education, which at the moment, my feeling is I don't think there is a lot of space around it. So I think the first thing that I would do is just to ask you if you could do just a bit of an introduction about yourself so that we get to know more about you and what makes you tick.
Yeah, thanks so much. Again, like when people ask me to introduce myself, I've actually switched how I talk about it because I think sometimes there's this idea that when you talk about like your achievements, people wouldn't follow you. But I think one of the things that I've learned is that when you talk about your ideal, then you know if the right people will follow you or not. So when people ask me to introduce myself, I won't probably say I'm a TEDx speaker or I've written this number of books or I've done this work that I've reached thousands or millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Rather, I talk about like my ideal, and the ideal is that I want to help other people cross, especially young people in the South communities, young people without the resources. I want to help them cross and help them change their circumstances. And the belief is that by helping them cross, by helping them change their circumstances and that of their family and that of their community, they would probably also do the same for other people. So the goal is to, is to inspire one person. And I mean, if I happen to inspire millions, so be it. But the goal is to, up one person cross. And if somebody asks me, Ahmed, introduce yourself, I think I like to talk about like me being a smaller piece in the jigsaw puzzle of a young person or of somebody, maybe through a random act of kindness, or maybe through the words that I put out there, or maybe through my heart, or maybe through, the way I speak or I interact with people. So I think if I would love to talk about myself, I think I would love to talk about my ideals. Obviously, like I run a nonprofit and I that support young people in South Country to develop life and 21st century skills. But all of those work still revolves around this ideal that I believe in. So I would say that I will keep it at that as a way of introduction instead.
All right, great. I think this is a very good starting point to have an introduction. So it will take us back because I think
Mhm.
I've come to now learn about how the way we were brought up, the experiences we had, both positive and negative, have a way of shaping who we are as individuals. And there is a particular person watching either from Malawi or from Nigeria who wants to understand how this person they are seeing now
Mm.
where did this person come from? Were they just made like this, or did they just drop from somewhere completely made with all these achievements, or there was a kind of a process that they had to go through? So just take us through a bit of your background.
Yeah, thanks so much. And like I've shared in many of my posts, that I was born and raised in one of the largest floating slum in Africa, Makoko, Nigeria. And I lost my mom when I was 7, and my dad became unemployed at the same time. I stayed out of school for academic term, and it was the same for my younger brother, who actually stayed out of school for academic year, until I attended a program for vulnerable children. I think when I was 14, yeah, I think it was 14, I attended a program for vulnerable children. And in that program, they actually introduced me to leadership and self-esteem. And one of the definition of self-esteem, then they said like self-esteem is the way you see yourself and the way you see the world and the way you handle yourself and the way you handle the world. And you can imagine, a young person in the slum and going into like a particular program, hearing something like that. There was an epiphany that I got. I didn't know what I'm going to do about that statement, but I knew that I need to start seeing myself as something. And that was why I started finding courage to speak, finding courage to share. In fact, I could recall then that I went for another program where the first lady then of my state in Lagos was in that program. And she asked a question. And I answered the question. Like I was literally like standing up and answering the question. And in fact, she didn't call me at first. There were two of us who raised up our hands, and there was this lady. She called her, and the lady went on, and the lady shared, and she said like that guy that raised up his hand, I want him to also share. And that was how I came out, and I shared my thoughts on that question that she had asked. And by just raising up my hand, sharing, I even went in depth than the first person who shared. And I went into details, and I know some news people actually called me to the side, started getting like a kind of like news interview on the side, even though my English were not well put together. Then the things that I know or the things that I could say of. And it's I think we sometimes forget those little journey, those little pockets of things that happens to us, and how those little pocket of things kind of like inspired us to do things that we do now. And I remember then that I was published in the newspaper. I think it was December 19, 2007. I can't remember, on the Guardian newspaper in Nigeria. And to be honest, like I didn't know where that newspaper is. I have not seen it myself. Neither did I buy it, or did I know that I was published on the newspaper with the first lady. I had the picture. The picture has now been damaged, obviously. But there was something that happened. There was something that happened when I go back to school then, because I was in a boarding house and I went to school, and one of my classmates, Ahmed, I actually saw you in the newspaper of so. I'm like, oh, really? I didn't know that. I didn't know I was in the newspaper. And it just shows like those little steps, those little things that you hear, how it kind of like encourage you to be a better person. And I could also recall during those moments I would walk in the streets as well. So I used to sell spaghetti and sweets. Like I would literally walk. And when I'm walking, I saw people whose condition were worse than mine. When I was living in the slum, I see people who I can say that they are role models, and I see people that I'm like, okay, now I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be like this person. And I was young, but I could sense things. I could like think about things. I could reflect on things. Just I was looking for like the support. I don't know where the support would come from. But one of the things that I also learned from walking in the streets then, aside from connecting to the problem that my community was facing, it was also more or less like I was building. Like that was how I started my first business. So my first business was actually like, so I was working for the family, obviously. But then when I sold everything for the family, I was saving like then 30 naira. That's the young currency. It's like, it's nothing compared to the amount to spend now. So I 30 naira per day for like let's say 30 days, 300 naira. So I bought my own set of spaghetti as well. So I bought my set of spaghetti and I started selling mine as well, and I was making profit from it. And I could recall that when somebody wants to buy from me, I would look at the market price. I would look at like, I would then negotiate with them, and then I'm trying to sell for profits. And to be honest, you may think that, oh, working on the streets is like child labor. Obviously, yes, at the time. But then I was building some certain skills along that line. And, those were the experiences I was getting. That engagement, being able to confront people who would negotiate with me, being able to confront a stranger on the street and talk and share and negotiate so that I can sell. And those things were part of like my character building years and character building journey. And by the time I finished secondary school, I think I was already 15 then. I started teaching in a basic rural school. So we moved from one of the slums we're living in to another very like hard to reach rural community. Like, all these new sites where people like, there are literally no houses. There were bushes around us. In fact, when we went to that place, we were like chased from one of the houses we were living in the slum that we should move away. And that would have probably also been the first time that I would have been homeless. So because we had nowhere to stay, so it was one of our neighbors that said, okay, would you want to join us in this uncompleted building and live with us? And it was like uncompleted building, like the windows were like, we're fixing the windows with like polyethylene bag. The floor was clay all through. All the kids, both of my parents and we all sleeping in the same room, on the same bed, lying down. We used to do number one. just to like lie down, and sometimes I will cut sticks for cooking and all of those things. Like it was, and then I will serve as laborer for people who are like building new houses. So we clear the grasses. Like I was so good at clearing. I was telling some people that I used to clear grasses. They were like, no, you don't look like that. I'm like, I will actually roll my hands like this and I'll clear. Like I use cutlass. Like I would literally clear, because I learned that in the boarding house. I went to a boarding house as well. So it was, I was doing the laborer and I started teaching as well at the same time. So I got a job as a nursery school teacher in the nursery school where I was teaching basic literacy and numeracy skills. And yeah, and it continued to compound like that. I got into the university, volunteer with the Nigerian Red Cross in the university, was doing free tutorials for other students in my departments. I would do free tutorials. I actually did free tutorials for 4 years during the universities. Like I was just teaching people for free. And it was one of my ways of learning, because to teach is to learn twice. So whenever I'm teaching people, I'm actually revising. And so when I get to exams, like it's easy for me because I've learned about it multiple times already. And at the end of the day, I became the best graduating student in my department. At uni, I got university scholarship along the line as well in between, because as a best student you get a scholarship as well. And I also had the opportunity of my dad, aunts, and my and our husband also sponsoring me through university. So life started changing a bit around those moments, but it wasn't just about going to the university to learn. It was also about like engaging. I did politics, I did many other things that kind of like gave me the experiences, and all of those experiences contributed to whatever opportunity I got next. So it was like me showing up, and when I was a student, it was all of those experiences became things that were made up of my CV when I graduated, because when I graduated, I had things on my CV. Like I was in second in command in Red Cross when I was doing Red Cross in the uni. I was like the deputy, kind of like, they call it commandant, but it's like, let's just say like a deputy president kind of thing, and all of those leadership experiences, contributed to whatever opportunities. And that was how I started meeting people as well. That was also like my journey into change making in between. By the time I graduated and I went for my national youth service, and I did like 6 projects in my national youth service as well, and I got a national youth service award, a state award at the end of the national youth service as well. And sometimes I'm doing this thing and I don't even know what it will lead. Like I don't know where it's leading me to be honest. In fact, like I was one of those who knew nothing about opportunities. Like when they say international opportunities, global opportunities, or when they say there are fellowships, even the local ones within my country, I don't know them. I don't know if they exist. I was just one person who wanted to do something within wherever I find myself in. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to give back in a way. If I know something, I feel like other people should know it. Until I did that NYC project, the National Youth Service project, and I shared the story on social media. When I am not the one that I used to also share. When I was in Red Cross, you will not see me talk about those volunteering at all. That was the first time that I was sharing, like literally. I didn't even know that there was something like sharing on social media. And when I shared, one of the person who was a Red Cross member but was a senior, so then I was like, oh, this project you've done, you actually qualify for Mandela Washington Fellowship. Like, I think with this project, you should apply for the Young African Leadership Program and everything. So he shared the link, and that was how I started digging into things. And I was digging into things, and I started finding out the opportunities. And I think I applied for Mandela Washington then, and the Regional Leadership Center program as well in Ghana. And both of them came back with a rejection. Even before they came back with a rejection, I think I knew that they were asking that during that process that who has taken any yearly online courses, and I've not taken any. So in like 3 days, I actually took 15 yearly online courses. Yeah, in like 3 days, I did all the 15 courses, got all the certificate. And there was just that push around, like, and I joined a Facebook group where they were like, young change makers doing amazing things. And I'm like, okay, wow. Like I started having access to stories, and I started having access to like, okay, maybe I need to go out more. I need to connect more. So I would say that, and I started connecting with my own problems as well, the challenges I was going through. I started figuring out ways to start whatever initiative I wanted to start. It was in between all of those engagements. And I was speaking to some young people recently, and I'm like, maybe your purpose is first is to be on a quest, is to search for something, is to search for meaning, is to search for a quest, is to being on that search, on that journey. That in itself is a purpose on its own. And that's how you kind of encounter purpose. So you have to first have a why in between of searching, and before you know, your stories connect together. So I think that's the overview of the journey. Is at the end of the day it's like a zigzag kind of thing, and at the end of the day, all the stories end up connecting together in between the process, and I think that's how my journey actually took shape in between.
All right, thank you. This is very powerful. I think as you were speaking, I started also to relate with a few things. You talked about teaching in secondary school. One of the things that I also used to do when I was in secondary school was to teach. I used to teach mathematics, not teach as in teaching a class, but when we're dealing with clubs, usually I could volunteer to be somebody who's going to be teaching my fellow students. And eventually, as you rightly said, when an exam came, I usually remembered what I was teaching other people more as compared to the other things that I didn't. So that element of teaching, I think volunteering, it also helped me to learn a lot more. And second bit was also the issue about being a very active student within the university. Again, I can't remember the time that I was not involved in something when I was in university. I also participated in student politics. I was the director of publications. Interesting stories. There was an election, but the candidates that I was contesting against, they all ended up pulling out. So I ended up going unopposed. But still, that introduced me to a bit of the student politics bit. And by the time I was also graduating, I had one or two things that I could then add on my CV to say, look, when I was doing my studies, these are some of the things that I did. And I do remember one person who called me and said, when you're applying for jobs, please, by all means, mention some of the things that you were doing in college, because that's really going to go a long way. So I was resonating quite a lot with the things that you were sharing. One thing that kept coming up is the issue of, you mentioned that you attended a program where they talked about self-esteem. I wanted us to dig deeper in the context of self-esteem, because I've coming to learn that learning that you are someone, I think, is something that is quite important for most of us. And it might be because of the context that we come from, where that is not really a conversation that we have. It's assumed that you figure it out. How was your experience managing, or how has it been managing your self-esteem?
I think it comes from pocket of many things. I think most of the time when we are thinking of self-esteem, I think we also need to talk about courage. Because that courage could come from external, for example. So by just hearing somebody says that, because when I went to that camp as well, there was one of the tutors who liked me, and he picked interest in me then. And I would answer questions in that camp. I would share my thoughts. It wasn't also a school system, so I could freelance. I could broaden my thinking, and I could share. And I could recall that by the end of the program, when my dad was coming to fetch I and my brother, he told my dad that your boy is brilliant. I think he's talented. I think he's good. I don't know, but I feel like he's a good one. And by just hearing that statement alone, changed many things for me. I think most of the time we don't know what the words of others can do on us. We don't know what a good word can do on us, right? And I think by sharing such a word to a young person who is like a teenager, who is growing and who is grappling with life and struggling, by hearing those words, They're like, it's like a scaffolding. You need scaffolding to to stand on before a building can stay. And I think those were one of my scaffolding. It was those words that I heard, from people who are like tutors, for example. That pushed me to understand that I am something. I don't know what that thing is, but I think in my own right and in my own accord, I'm a brilliant person. I don't just know what it is, and maybe that brilliance might not be found in the classroom yet. The same thing with when I did, I think it was like in my first year of secondary, no, of senior secondary school, and I was doing an accounting course, and I think I scored really low in the first assessment we did. And I remember actually like going back home and telling my dad I scored low, and there was one of our family friends who scored really high. And my dad was like, "Oh, you don't know anything," kind of thing, all those remarks you get, which was kind of like negative at the time. And I'm the kind of person that writes on negative comments as well. Like, if you tell me that I can't do something, I think that's when I'm gonna like show you that I would do it. When I fail is when I'm the most energetic. When you reject me is when I will say that I'm coming back again. So I don't know how, I don't know where I got the strength from, but I know that whenever you tell me no, I would find a way to tell myself yes. And I went back to school after then, and I could recall as well. So when people would go out for break, I wouldn't. I'll be doing the other accounting, like all the assessments in the accounting textbook, I would do everything. Like I would just like keep writing, learning and everything. Like I was like all the accounting I didn't know in my first year, I knew them in my second year. Like all of a sudden, I was just so good at it. And it was because of the dedication as well. So when we did the first assessment, when we did another assessment, I actually scored higher. I think out of 60, I scored 50. Out of like the objective question that was 20, I scored 17. Out of the 20, I only failed 3. And even the reason why I scored 50 was because there was something I missed in the heading. All my calculations were correct, they were right. And one of the things that teacher used to do that if you score 50 and above over 60, you'll be called and you'll be given like an handshake from him. So he called me out for the first time ever. Having such a score, never has it happened before in my life since I've been going through school. And for the first time, I was being called and I got that handshake. I became friends with everyone in the classroom. People wanted to sit beside me. And I remember like them walking, and then the teacher saw me and called me, and it's like, "I'm proud of you. You're improving. And I'm proud of you." And you can hear those words. It's created something for me. Like there was just a spark that by hearing that I'm proud of you, it then transcend into other subjects unknowingly in a way. And before you know, like the other subject I was also smashing. So I would say that it's those words you hear from other people. We never can tell those, external remark that we get. In fact, there was also a time when I was in secondary school that people would call me Smigo and Frodo, which was bad. Like, children, when you look at teenagers, we can be very terrible at times, younger people who are in school, we can be terrible. People will call you different names, they will give you different names. There was a time it nearly tarnished my self-image at the time. But then every moment I have to always tell myself. So I'll be finding straight to other things like academics. I have to constantly tell myself that I'm good, I'm brilliant, I'm this, I'm that. Is that constant also conversation with yourself, which I think I've been talking about recently about self-awareness and self-conversation, that, there's a need for you to constantly have self-conversation with yourself to know that when people call you something, you might not be what people are calling you as well. So I would say that those are the ways that I've been able to deal with my self-esteem in a way. I think one is like that reframing, and also the other one is this scaffolding you get from like people like mentors, that when you're about to fall, these are people that, they hold the building until the building can stand on its own. And we never can tell what well done can actually do for somebody, or can do for somebody who is trying something. And, it's a beautiful thing to have somebody who kind of like share a word of encouragement with us. And And yeah, and just knowing that, you know, you can always talk your way out of things as well. Like, you know, have conversation, talk to yourself, you know who you are. I think that's the first thing. I think many people still don't know who they are. I think if you know who you are already, I think it's a journey. It's a constant journey. It's not something you get to immediately. In fact, up until now, there are still some things I don't know about myself that I'm still figuring it out. So I would say that that's one of the ways to actually deal with our self-image, and I can go on to talk about so many other things around also like separating ourselves from our being. There's like separating things that, so for example, when it comes to like a job, for example, right? How do you separate your job from who you are? That your job can be a part of who you are, but it's not everything. You're multiple other things. And most time when people my boss spoke to me this way, blah blah blah, you know, people have those complaints. You're multiple other things. That you might not even be growing in your job doesn't mean you're not growing in other things as well. So it's that separation of like your being from your job. I think it also helps us to deal with our image as well. That we might not be progressing in a particular area doesn't mean that we are not progressing in other things. And by seeing that as well, I think it's kind of like increase our self-esteem, because when you think that you're all your job and then you're being shattered by the job or by whatever you're doing, by that one thing, you're being shattered by that one thing, it then affects other things as well. But when you understand that that's not just all you are, that you're multiple other things, and there are multiple ways of being, and there are the multiple ways of, you know, contribution, there are multiple ways of like accessing opportunities, that by the virtue of who you are and by the virtue of being, you will get into spaces. I think it also helps us with our self-image as well.
Oh, wow, wow. This is getting more interesting. You put up a post that had a lot of rejections that you received.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very certain that it's also one of the posts that you got some decent engagement from people.
Yeah.
Either people being impressed and others being shocked. I remember I shared your post and one person said, I don't know how to feel on whether I have to be motivated or demotivated. Um, I wanted to get the thought process behind what made you put up that whole list of rejections that you got.
Yes.
And also, how have you been able to process getting all those rejections and still going ahead and making all the applications that you're still doing?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. I think mm, so. I think the first thing that inspired the post was um, it was the end of the year, and obviously people will share their wins, which is good. I do that sometimes as well. And there were people who were like, "Oh, it's the end of the year. People will be sharing their wins. You know, you should be careful. You've also done this." Like people were sharing that post, but they were not giving us. They're not showing the practicals. Like they're not showing that people are writing that you should be. You know, people are sharing their wins. Even though you've been rejected, you've also been great at some other things. I'm like, you can be sharing that, which is okay, but I'm like, I will show you what it means to not share your wins. It was just a way of like, I want to share like, another thing entirely. What if I'm announcing my rejections? And for somebody like me as well, who people feel like I'm getting a lot of opportunities as well, I think it came shocking to them that I've received such a number of rejection. Because he's doing great. There are also somebody even commented on one of my posts then that, you are just winning. But actually they don't know the process. Because I think one of the things that is happening today on social media is that people are comparing themselves with each other. And sometimes they are comparing with something that they don't know about. They are comparing with somebody that they don't know what their processes is, because they didn't share their process and they are sharing their wins, that they might be winning, but you don't know other things that they are going through and other things that they are battling with and the processes as well. So I wanted to like change that. I wanted it to be cool to share your rejections too. That it's not just about like I am winning and I am winning. And by somebody like me who has gotten maybe some other opportunities, sharing their rejections, people are now finding courage through that post to share theirs, because there were other people who started sharing after I've shared. There are multiple other people who followed that route and started sharing that. In fact, like up until like the beginning of January, I see, people were referring to me and they were sharing their rejections. And I was like proud, because I was like, that's a movement. Because there was a time I wanted to like do a movement around sharing rejection. I didn't even know that a rejection post would build that movement that I was looking for. That by me just being vulnerable to put my rejection out there, that will inspire others to know that failure is part of the process. Failure is part of the equation. There's no one who has said to us that we'll get everything that we apply to. There's no one who has said to us that we would not fail. And it's by the virtue of rejection that we actually build remarkable things. Like there are some certain things that I've been able to do, and it was because I put myself out there. It was because I'm like, I'm going to try and apply. Let's see what happens. Like, and before you know, I'm framing my thoughts, the question that I'm seeing, the answer I'm providing. These were things that I would not have thought about before, and they were like upping my work and upping my, it was like, it's like a growth process most of the time. We don't see, people see rejection as, oh, it's like now I don't even, if I get rejected, I don't even care anymore, because I think I've built immunity to rejection. Like I still received one yesterday. Like it didn't even seem as if I've received anything, because I'm like, whatever, like I've seen the worst already. I've seen the worst of rejection with visas, for example, endorsements, paying money, spending like thousands and tens of thousands of pounds, losing such a money. Like, what rejection did I want to get that I'll start feeling sad? I'm like, no, I know that that's part of the equation. It allows me to innovate, it allows me to create, it allows me to build. That sometimes the winning is not even in the outcome, but in the process. When we look at the process, we will know that some people have not been able to write a draft before. If you're writing a draft for the first time, that's a win. That means you have a draft to build on for another opportunity. If you've been called for interview and you've not been interviewed before, that's an opportunity. That's an audition. Every rejection was an audition. Every rejection was an opportunity to be better than who we were yesterday. And the truth is that reframing helps us. It's like cognitive rearrangements, right? When you feel rejected and you rearrange, within your brain, like you could say that, for example, I told myself something that the people who reject me are not bad people. If I'm in their position, I will reject people too. That it's not that I'm too special. There are many great people in the world. Even though I'm good, there are also many good people. And that's their time as well. My time would also come. And if I were to be in that position, I would also reject some people. So they are not bad people. I used to send people who reject me, I'll send them connection requests on LinkedIn. Yes. Because I'm like, we'll meet again. It's fine. That we might not align today does not mean we will not align tomorrow. I was rejected for a particular program where the next year I was in the interview again. I was in the interview the first time, I get in the interview the second time again. And I'm like, it's nice to meet you again, the same set of people, right? And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you interviewed me last year. I'm back. It was, no, it's the truth. It was incredible, to be like, and I shared, and I got on the second time, and and there are many opportunities that I've gotten that they will tell me that it's because of my character. That's why I kind of like, they love the way I've received feedback. They love the way I've taken feedback. Those are the things that people need to work on. Some people have they can't take rejection. You will get rejected and you fight everybody. You would burn the relationship immediately. You burn it to the ground. But the truth is that it's part of the process. Nobody would give you, and it's not just going to happen, right? So I would say that for me, that's like the rejection, and you're not also your rejection. They did not reject you. They rejected an application. It wasn't you. You always have an opportunity to be better than who you were yesterday. Rejection should not stop you from pursuing purpose. You have a why, that's why you applied. it's not because of the opportunity you want to get. It's because there's a mission you want to pursue and a why. So that should be the focus. That should be something you're improving on. So for me, it's like, it's those reframing kind of that kind of like help me. And I'm like, one of the ways to reject rejection is by trying again. You know, people are doing some posts, they will say, I reject rejection. I send them an email, I reject rejection. And I'm like, no, that's not a good attitude to say. It's not a good way. The
I
way,
wouldn't even recommend it, no, at all.
yeah, the way you can reject rejection
Mm-hmm.
is by trying again.
Mm-hmm.
Or the way you can reject rejection is by pursuing your purpose in a way that is even bigger the next time, that maybe there are some opportunities that they would invite you into a room and into a space. Like I went to Saudi Arabia in 2023. I didn't apply. It's by the virtue of my work and by the virtue of being. And that's why I said rejection should not stop you from pursuing purpose. I was always talking about my work with refugees when I was working with Refugee Education UK in London. Like I would talk about like my work, my experiences. So when this organization in Saudi Arabia were looking for international creative to design solutions for refugees, they went on LinkedIn and they said, who are the people speaking about refugees? My name came out. And that was how they reached out to me via my Yahoo Mail that I've stopped using. And it was what I used to register my LinkedIn. When I saw it, I'm like, is this one of the scams? Because they were like, everything will be covered. And I'm like asking more questions. I'm like, you know, and at the end of the day, it turned out to be real. And they booked everything, 5-star hotel, picked me with a jeep from the airport. You know, like I had fun. And I won, you know, the Education Track Award for the solution I created there. And was celebrated and all of those things. It didn't come through an application. It came by the virtue of being. And by the virtue of our being, by the virtue of pursuing our purpose, there are some opportunities that will come to us that will not even be the mainstream opportunity that everybody knows of. But it's because of who we are, and it's because of showing up. That's how we get the opportunity. So I just felt like it was necessary to tell people about the process, that it's not just, you know, we are sharing our wins, that there are process to things, you know, and in between those things, you know, we were still like working and forging ahead. Was it hard? Yeah, it's hard because the time you put in, it's not easy to write essay. I'm writing an essay now for a particular Uji accelerator. It's hard, like nearly 38 questions. It's difficult with framework, with technical questions, with budgets, with timelines. It's hard. Imagine going through all of those things and then you get rejected at the end of the day. It's difficult. But the truth is that I'm forcing myself to build. Now I have a draft, you know, to build upon. Every rejection forces you to create and build. So if I don't put myself out there, if I don't embrace difficulty, I don't think there's a way that I'm going to win.
No, I think that's just the best way of putting it. That I think getting that level of understanding that there's a certain level of thinking that comes with also a certain level of push that you'd like to have. And I think those two I'm learning that they do resonate. And I like your example, actually, the one you shared about where you went to Saudi and you didn't apply. I went to Kenya some years back. Again, I didn't apply. There was a meeting that was happening. There were people that realized that they needed a delegate from Malawi for some funny reason. There was no one from Malawi. And then they called a person who said, I know a guy. And then they recommended my name. And I actually remember what that person said. The person said, this guy is just going to be one guy. Here are his social media links. Just check him out. You're going to like him. And one thing that I'm also going to tell you is if you take this guy and if he comes to this meeting, you will know that he's present in that space. I didn't know all this stuff. So I go to that meeting in my usual style. If I've been given an opportunity, I always promise myself that I'm going to over because there are certain people that have trusted me to represent them. And the last thing that I want is to tarnish somebody's name who bet on me for a particular opportunity. So I went there, I'm being myself, I'm asking all questions and everything. That's when the organizers were calling me and said, this is what was said about you, and you have already exceeded our expectations. So I started laughing. And then when I went back to Malawi, what I did was I organized a follow-up workshop based on the learnings that I got from that particular workshop to have another workshop. A couple of months later, guess what happened? I get an email from the organizers of the event saying they are writing their report of that particular year, and they want to feature me as one of the delegates who went through their training and was able to do something practical with what I just learned from that particular workshop. So since then, we have been in touch. Why? Because of that understanding of saying, look, somebody has invested their trust as a currency in me. I am not going to make sure that I mess up with that trust. I'm going to over deliver for the sake of my reputation and also the reputation of the person who trusted me in the first place to go to that particular event. So that's one of the things that I think we are sharing when you were talking, that when you went to Saudi, you had an understanding that I'm not going there for the flight. I'm not going there to be in the hotel for the selfies and everything. You're like, okay, that will happen, yes. But that's not that's not why I'm there. You have trusted in me, and I'm going to prove to you that you made the best decision by bringing me here, because you could have taken another person for this particular opportunity. So I think that's also something that I'm learning. Now, the other question, I'm still waiting for questions from the chat. The other question that I'm going to ask you is around, there are two questions, right? The first one is self-elimination. Self-elimination. And this is coming from a number of programs that I've been part of, where if you're calling for Africans to apply, you are most certainly clear of which countries are going to give you more applications and which countries you're not going to get more applications from. Nigeria is one of them. There's South Africa, there is Kenya, there's Ghana, you know the countries. And I've always struggled with understanding how the other countries are not showing up for these opportunities. And which we can always speculate, right? But what are some of the things you have observed also from your side of work in terms of what is it that is pushing people to apply, right? The second question is about shrinking. And this I can also even share from my experience, where when I moved from Malawi, which I believe was a place where I started shrinking when I was starting, but when I reached a certain level, I had a certain level of confidence where any opportunity that I applied for, I was not just applying. I had the confidence that I am not just the right candidate. I am the best candidate countrywide, right? It might be true, it might not be true, but that level of confidence I had was there. When I moved to the UK, I started feeling like I am small. This is a very big country, and I am not sure about where I place myself. And that also affected my level of confidence. You and we have moved countries. So that's why I asked you that question. How have you been able to handle these two bits? So over to you.
Thank you. For the first question around countries, like Nigerians actually like going for things and applying for opportunities, and Kenyans as well, right? It's always on top of things, Ghanaians, and South Africans, and many of those countries. I think we could actually make an argument for population, right? So we could make an argument that those countries actually have more people within their countries, and it means that there are multiple access to like inspiration as well. And by people actually going on to do things, people are being inspired by those things, and they also want to do the same. I would say that, when you look at Nigerians, people will say Nigerians are loud and all of those things, but actually they tell stories, right? People tell stories. People would share that, oh, I've gotten these opportunities, and they are willing to mentor other people and hold their hand through the process. You see people without even asking them, people organize webinars without even asking them. You see people write a document, that they will even put on social media without, like there's like this sharing that is caring in a way. And I could, argue that maybe it's population wise because of the number of people we have, but I would say that it's also that idea of like, okay, how, do we share all of these opportunities, especially even I might not be able to speak with everybody, because I think people would have different experiences of Nigerians and other countries as well. But I would say that I can speak for myself. And when I'm speaking for myself, I mean that there's no opportunity that I've gotten. Like the next year, the people would know about those opportunities. There will be a lot of people. Like every single opportunity that I've gotten, I barely talk about like this most of the time. But you see that by my influence and by the virtue of that, Ahmed went and he got in, even though with his experiences, even though with the things that he has done, even though with his struggle, Ahmed was still able to make it into this program that seems is prestigious. Then I believe in myself that I can do it. For example, when I got Chevening and all of those scholarships, there were people who felt like, oh, Ahmed got it. Okay, now I know that I have the chance to. And they were encouraged, and then they fought as well, and they got it. There were fellowships like I've gotten in the past that, oh, Ahmed was there. Or if Ahmed can't be there, I'll be there. There were also people that I saw that were like seniors to me, who were like, oh, they got this opportunity. Okay, I might have that opportunity, so I'll get it in the future. It might not be now. So I think is that also like external courage that trickles down to other people within the population. Is the idea that when we share, and that's why for me, I'm like, when people say I don't want to share an opportunity, I'm like, you don't know who is watching and who will gain an inspiration from actually sharing. And that's why I don't also beat people who share their wins. I think the challenge that I would have is that when you're sharing your win and you're just sharing it to like, you want to, this idea of like, you want to make people feel jealous or something. That one, I'm like, no. But if you're sharing with the idea that you want to inspire other people so that they can pursue the opportunities as well, I think that would be great. So I would say that whilst I understand, that idea, I would say that maybe other people from other countries as well who have gotten those opportunities, maybe they need to start telling their stories. And by telling their stories, by sharing, they will give people the courage to also apply that it is possible. Because sometimes you don't know that something is possible until somebody have done it before. And when you look at numerous things that people have done, numerous innovation that has been created in the world, numerous groundbreaking things that people have done, it was actually people actually working the first part to do it. And then by sharing, then other people find the courage. And I think that that's something that can happen with other countries as well. The more we share, the more people find inspiration. Oh, so I can actually get this thing. So I can actually leave my cocoon to engage. I can actually debate. I can actually, in fact, like it's also more or less like you can feel like you're not small as well in between, because there's this binary and that idea that white is superior. There's this binary and that idea that when you are in a program or when like there's that validation that comes with it, and I'm like, no, right? We also have something like your inspiration should not be a white person. They could be, I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I think that by sharing, the inspiration is not like, oh, Ahmed is getting to this space and is engaging and is being himself and being authentic in that space. It's possible for me to be the same. And then you're finding that inspiration within those spaces as well. So I think we need more of that as well across the continent. We need more people to share their stories. We need more people to come out to share. And by that, people will also be encouraged to pursue an opportunity and find courage within themselves at the end of the day. And I understand when people also don't choose to share. I also understand that there's a lot around sharing as well. It's difficult. It comes with a lot of baggages. But I just want to like touch on that. That's where people find courage from, is by sharing. And I would say that the second reflection that I was having, which is shrinking in a new environment. When I was coming to the UK, I told myself something. I said I would fight. It was intentional. Like I told myself that whatever I was doing before I traveled, I will not stop them. Come what may be, I am a Nigerian first before anything else. Come what may be, the work I was doing is as important as any other work that I'm going to do. And I think by framing it that way and by having that experiences, I was able to deal with any conflict of shrinking that I was having, that there's something that I'm bringing into a new space that is unique that many people do not have. that my journey and my experiences are unique as well. So having that framing, it's not that it didn't come with its own challenges. There were days where I also felt like, no, my confidence was like it was on the ground. There were jobs that I was doing and I was thinking that, no, I was like, I noticed that the people I was with were not aspiring. And I'm like, okay, there's a problem here, right? And again, it's me talking to myself, self-conversation, a lot of self-conversation. You talk to yourself, what makes you unique? Sometimes as well, you're in a new environment. You also don't expect to go like this immediately. You're like in a new country, you're starting somewhere. And I could recall then there was a quote I mentioned that sometimes to move forward, you have to move backward. You have to take the step backward. You have to try again. You have to pick your battle again. You've done it before. There's a possibility that you can do it again. And you don't expect that you're in a new country, somebody will give you things on a platter of gold. You don't expect in a new country that they will just hand over things to you. You don't expect another culture to just bow to who you are and to your culture as well. There's always going to be a conflict. So for me, is that understanding that I have to start from somewhere, but my eye is still on the prize. So it's the understanding that there has to be a place where I'll pick my battle, but then there are other things that also gives me joy beyond being here. So one of the things that I started doing was that what are the other jobs that were giving me joy? Was my work in Nigeria. I'm like, that gives me a lot of joy and I'm not going to stop it. Even though I'm like a small young coordinator in a particular organization, working somewhere, doing all of the admin work, I'm also a founder and CEO of an organization, and that in itself is something. And I will not allow, because I'm an administrator here, to affect that image of that work. So I started separating. So that's why I said that it might seem that you're moving backward, but you're actually moving forward. Because then you're building a new set of experiences. And those new set of experiences, when you combine it with what you already have, you would skyrocket. So for me, I was like looking at all of those things and I'm like, actually, I've done this before. This is me. I mean, before I came to the UK, I was a regional manager of a nonprofit in Sub-Saharan Africa. So imagine being a regional manager and all of a sudden it seems you're being demoted. But I knew that, it's going to be temporary. I knew that I needed to pick my battles again. I knew that maybe sometimes you also need to learn humility as well in between that process. There are so many things that we are learning across that journey, and then you need to pick your battles in between that space and in between that journey. That when you now combine all of your experiences, then it compounds. And another thing is that location should not stop you from telling your story. That now I'm in a new country doesn't mean that I won't talk about things that I believe in. That I'm in a new country that I won't talk about things that have always been giving me joy and things that I love doing. That because I'm now doing this job, then I'll stop my own personal and professional development that gives me a lot of happiness. So for me, it was like me measuring the two and balancing and saying that I will not stop things that, and it came with a lot of reflection. It was painful. It was a process that I had to go through. But I had to speak with myself that what are the things that I need to start doing that puts me back on track, right? And by telling my stories, I started getting opportunities, guest speaking at Open University, so many other things within like it got to a stage in London that I was already like having my ground, even winning an award, right, for the work that I was doing. That even though that I'm in a junior role doesn't mean that I can't tell the story of that work and the role and the impact of the work that I'm doing. That I might be in a junior role doesn't mean, or in a junior position doesn't mean I'm not senior. That is just by the virtue of that position, which is totally fine at the time, and it's okay. And it's that role that bet me writing the paper, publishing, presenting in Oxford. So it's actually like, instead of killing yourself in the role, how do you define that role to make it what you want? So I started looking at the role and started redefining my role for myself. And I was like, okay, I'll keep telling my own story within this role. I'll keep finding my ways within this role. And before you know, like when I was even getting my promotion, I was given like more of an ambassadorial title. Like if they need an external person to speak about the work, I'll be the one to go and represent the organization. That's it. You're defining the role for who you are and for the things that gives you joy and that brings you joy as well. But that takes a lot of thinking and a lot of process, right? And I would say that location should not stop you from building. You can start from somewhere and still finding your ways and community. In fact, I told myself that because if the moment you stop a fellowship and all of those things, or maybe the moment you stop personal development, don't let me call it fellowship. The moment you stop personal development, you're blocking your way out of community. We are community across time. Some of the opportunities that we get in the future is because of the community we are in. So most of the time, you wouldn't allow one piece of community affect all other communities. What if you lose your job? Then what would you have? What would remain? So I told myself that I'm not going to tie my opportunity to a location.
All right. Thank you so much. Finally, we have gotten a question. So, what strategies or mindset shifts would you recommend for effectively handling rejection and turning it into a learning opportunity?
Do you want to answer that as well?
You can answer that one, and then I also share my thoughts. But yeah, I think you can start with it.
So what strategies or mindset shifts would you recommend for effectively handling rejections and turning it into a learning opportunity? I think it's the first step is to separate yourself from the rejection. I think it's very important, and by separating yourself, you're now separating yourself from the rejection, and then you can look at the rejection with another perspective. It's your essay that you've written, right? It's something you've submitted. It's an interview that you've done. So by separating yourself, you're not being the judge as well. So you're not putting yourself in the position of judge. It's like now it's not an external person have graded you, they've rejected you, obviously, yes, but then you are now also judging yourself. And then you're going back, oh, actually, I didn't write this essay well. Oh, actually, there was something that was missing. Maybe I haven't done enough work. Oh, maybe I should have, I should have used this example better. I think this example would have been better. Oh, maybe I need to do more work. Oh, maybe I need to and then you're asking yourself those kind of questions. So it's like you're quick to learn and absorb immediately. Maybe I need to use my money to build a prototype first. Oh, maybe I need to, show something because now I've not shown anything. How then would they trust me that I can build it? And then you're talking through yourself. And as you're talking through and you're judging yourself, then you're working to be better. Because you see, sometimes, I won't lie to you, there are bad applications. People submit rubbish applications. And the truth is that you're not part of I used to say that I tell people, don't be a lazy applicant. Sometimes you're just part of the number of the people they've rejected. We're like, oh, I've been rejected. I'm like, no, you did not apply in the first place. What you submitted was not an application. You're not part of the process. Because the moment somebody submits a rubbish application, you're just part of the numbers that they say 5,000 applied. Even if you will reject me, I want it to be difficult that I was rejected. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to make sure that I put in my best to answering the question. I think that's the first thing as well. So that you're not a lazy applicant that didn't do your research well, that didn't answer the questions really well. That, sometimes it might even be that you did not even pay attention to the question. They're asking a particular question and somebody is saying something else. You need to first understand, am I actually answering the question? Is the first question. In fact, that's the first thing if you're applying for anything. Did you answer the question? Did you? Right? So I think by separating yourself and going back and being objective, with the way you're looking back at your application, I think that could help you. And by also understanding that maybe there are some things beyond your control. Maybe you've given your best, and maybe they are just looking for a quota from some particular country. Maybe it's not just your fault. Maybe you did really well and you scored really high, but there were other people that they wanted to favor, because everybody that is funding also have an agenda. And you need to understand that sometimes you can't control those kind of agenda as well. And sometimes it's not your fault, but one day your own agenda too will align with their agenda too, and then you get in. So it's just again, reflecting, putting things into perspective in between. But then if you look at your essays and you think that, okay, could have been better, maybe then you should improve and you should keep doing the work. And again, like I said, every rejection is an audition. There were things that I'll be rejected for. I'll use the same application for something else and I'll rewrite them and I'll get in. So it's like seeing it as a draft. It's like seeing it like something that allows you to, like, you've built something that it's you own that. Like if you write an essay, you own that essay. It's yours. Now I have like almost 130 plus drafts. Anytime I go to my Google Drive, I will just see like documents upon documents of essays that I've written. And when I'm maybe applying for something else, I'll just open many of them down. And as I'm rewriting some certain things, I'm like, oh, let me see inspiration that I can get from my previous essays. So I think it's more of like reframing, and it's more of like, being the judge. They said the ultimate ideal is also the ultimate judge, right? There's an ideal you're looking at. By that virtue of that ideal, by that level you want to get to, you also have to judge yourself by that virtue as well. Yeah.
Thank you. This is very interesting. I don't think there's anything else that I can add. I mean, you have eloquently covered it, right? Starting from the very beginning, which is answer the question that has been asked. And I don't know how I'm going to overemphasize this point, because there are a lot of people that answer a question that they have created, but not necessarily the one that the application document is asking. And even during workshops, I'm always talking with people where I'm saying, look, let's break down the question first. What is the question asking of you to submit? And once you're very clear about it, again, for me, I've seen two things. One, there are some, after they understand the question, they are very clear that they don't have the assets that are required to answer that question. That would make peace with the fact that that application is not for them. They have to go get the experience. Or there are others that will opt to go for fiction. And what I always laugh when it comes to fiction is people think it's very difficult to tell when something is fiction, but it is not that difficult. Having gone through a number of applications, you're able to tell that this is pure fiction. It's very easy to tell. So so those are some of the things. Now, in terms of the processing, I think from my experience, it has been where I think I've grown just like you have as well, where there was a time where when I got a "we regret" email, it hit me so hard. And then I've moved to a point where it doesn't really hit me as much. In fact, when I receive an email, I can even be having a chat with people. I'll just open an email, just be like, okay, and then close it and continue the conversation.
Exactly. It's like I've got
okay, cool. Yeah, in my head, I know, okay, that chapter is closed. Then I'll be waiting for the other chapter, and then I move on. And also like you, I have folders that I've decided to have. And when I'm putting together applications, I'm always going through some of the other folders to gain that level of inspiration. So it's something that has taken time. This last question, because I know we're way above time, from how can someone deal with imposter syndrome where an individual doubts their abilities, competence, and achievements when applying for opportunities?
Oh, I actually forgot to say something when you were talking about shrinking. That another thing about shrinking, I think there was something I wanted to touch on that I forgot. It was competence.
Yes.
It was, the idea of like sometimes the reason why you feel like you're not confident. So confidence is a symptom of something. The lack of confidence is a symptom of something that is underlining. And that symptom could be competence. So, and there's a need for you to now, when you know that you lack that competence, there's now a need for you to build that capacity to get to that level. So, because then the problem has revealed itself to you. And now it's now very important for you that, okay, you need to go and build from somewhere. I need to start from somewhere. And as you're applying, you're building along the line. And to be honest, like almost every one of us are imposters as well. Like we're all scared. If you're applying, like I'll get into an interview, I'm also scared. In fact, I'll get into an opportunity and I'll be like, do I think I actually really qualify for this? But at the end of the day, you give it a shot because you never can tell. So it's better to try than not to try at all. When people say that they're not failing, I'm like, maybe you're playing it safe. If you say that you're not failing, it means that there's something, maybe you're playing it safe, or maybe you're not applying for something that will challenge you. Because sometimes the only way you can learn is by applying for something that will actually push your brain. Like that would tear, it would disturb you, and it's in that moment that you actually grow. So I would say that one of the ways is to and I think there is this idea in psychotherapy where when something is affecting you, you expose yourself in exposure therapy, where you expose yourself little by little, right? When I said I started an opportunity, I was doing the home and I watched it in an area, and I'm like, okay, maybe I need to start from the basics. So what I did was that I was getting into an opportunity within my country first, like the local ones. I would apply, I would get in, right, and I'll attend, and I'll meet other people. We share our own struggles and all of those things. And by sharing those struggles, by hearing from other people's story, you're then beating your own imposters as well, that actually I'm not the only one. So what is happening there is that you're exposing yourself little by little. Is called in psychology, is called systematic desensitization. So what you're trying to do is that you're exposing yourself little by little until you feel comfortable and confident, and you feel like you've built the necessary competence as well along the line for a bigger opportunity. So because you can apply for something and then it breaks you, and it might be like it's signaling something that is fundamental, which is actually going to the ground and doing the work. I've seen people today want to get opportunity that they do not deserve. And when they get rejected, they say, I've been rejected. But I'm like, you've not done the work. Get your hands dirty. Right? So there's a need for people to go onto the field, learn, build our competence, build our skills, build our knowledge base, read, listen to people, get involved. There are some lessons that you will learn. You will not learn it from a motivational book or motivational speaker somewhere. It's by engaging, that's when you get the insight and inspiration from, so that when you get to an interview and they're asking you questions, you have a lot of stories to draw from, and you have a lot of ideas. It's by engagements. Competence doesn't just happen in a day. Competence is, it happens over time. And first, you have to know that you'll be embarrassed. You have to know that it will be difficult. You have to know that you will make mistakes. I've been to an interview before where they were asking me what's my revenue model, and I said that's why I'm applying for that opportunity. And I'm like, okay. It was after the interview that I was like, that's not okay. You shouldn't have said that. And I started reading more about revenue model. And then we're receiving donation. I'm like, I could have talked about donation. I could have talked about, volunteering time and hours. That they might not seem like a revenue model, but there was something. But do you know what? That particular interview forced me to write a book. That it was even 5 years later that the book was published. And now the book is being used for, as part of the revenue model for my organization. So sometimes it's by, if you don't embrace that process, sometimes you will not learn what you can do. But I think you should, start somewhere, build a competence little by little, expose yourself gradually. There are some people who can go directly, fine, but I think, if you identify, why am I an imposter? What are the things that I need to address? What are the things that I think I need to do to make sure that I feel confident in a space? Do I need to get more courses done? Do I need to get involved with volunteering? Do I need to build my expert base more? Do I need to take an additional professional course? Do I need to what's that gap that can fill that? And I will tell you that it's hard, it's difficult. If you don't, for example, if somebody's saying that they can't speak and they are scared of public speaking, you will never learn how to speak until you start exposing yourself to speaking and making mistakes and embarrassing yourself on the stage. You will never learn how to write until you're writing and you're making mistakes with your writing. And then you're improving on your writing over time. So you will never get out of an imposter if you don't try and if you don't do what you're scared of. It's only when we do what we're afraid of that then the problem goes away. You know, I can tell you that, oh, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be okay. It's not okay. It's not fine. You know, when people tell me that some people are just getting opportunities because they can speak and they can write, I'm like, no. You know, when people tell you that, oh, it's because those people can write, that's why they are getting opportunities, right? No. If you think that they can write, you too learn how to write. And if you think that you're doing good work and your good work is not deserving the opportunity because you can't write, build the skills. If you can write, that means that it increases. It's like a net force. You become a net force for good. Because now you can write, it means that you can get more resources and more money to do the job. So when you can write, or when you can't speak or tell the story of your work, what does it do to you as an individual? So if you've identified that this is a gap, why not try and do something about it and build the skills rather than putting the blame on somebody else that you don't even know what their processes look like and how they've learned how to write as well.
Right. I think this was well covered. I'm not seeing any other question. I'm just going to add, I think what you say that from my experience, I think imposter syndrome comes in two ways. First of all, there are some people that are feeling like that because they really are imposters. You got an opportunity you were not supposed to get because you used the back door. And now that it's time for you to do the job, you can't do the job. So that's why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. And I'm not really putting anyone on the spot, but this is what usually happens sometimes where certain people that don't qualify for opportunities, they end up, getting the opportunity and then it's time to deliver and you can't deliver, then that becomes a problem. The second one is where I think was already covered, where you are somebody that can deliver, you already have the goods, but there is something in you that is telling you that there are certain things that you still require. So, and again, this is something that I've learned for every job that I'm going to be applying for, mostly. I am going to have what I would call capital skills, capital knowledge, capital experience. The one that gives me, that opens the door for me to get in.
Mm.
But once I'm in that job, I am supposed to gain a certain level of knowledge, a certain level of skills, and a certain level of experience to help me now to keep this thing going and to grow. What I've seen sometimes people not doing is where they feel like the knowledge that got them, that got that door open is sufficient and they don't want to do anything else. It might be, oh no, I got a master's, so that's about it. Or I got these skills, so that's about it. But we and I both know that this world is changing almost every day, especially now with artificial intelligence, where what I knew about AI last Friday is going to be something completely different when I'm going to go learn next week. So I have to be someone who is constantly training, constantly learning, constantly growing. And my body is going to be warning me by making me feel certain things if I'm kind of out of balance. Before, I used to think that emotions are negative, but I've come to learn that emotions are my friend. Emotions are things that will signal that there is something that I need to do. Emotions are going to tell me that for this particular role that you're doing, I feel like you should upgrade in your skills. I feel you should take a short course. I feel you should have a conversation. I feel you should have a mentor. And you see that once you start doing those things, your feelings are getting back to normal because you have started now taking that action that is helping you move in that positive direction. So for any person who is feeling like an imposter, like Ahmed said, just check clearly. Is it that it's something that has to be taken to another level, which is now psychotherapy or anything, or is it a warning sign where there's really a skill that you're supposed to get? There's a certain knowledge you're supposed to get. Because sometimes, and this is the last thing I'll say, we start feeling like an imposter because we meet professionals in our field who start sharing with us nuggets on things that we thought we knew, but we discover we don't know. And then we start panicking, like, oh no, I might lose my job because I don't know these things and everything. Instead of feeling like you might lose your job, sit, spend an hour, take a course, come and get to learn more about it, then you're going to be balanced. So I'm going to close it here.
Yeah, and I think I just want to quickly add something that the truth is
Yeah,
that
sure.
every single person who gets into an opportunity, not everybody actually knows what they are doing as well. People sometimes learn on the job and learn as they go. And by the virtue of that position, you're now in that position, you can improve. You can be better, just like you've actually mentioned. It's like, and one of the things I learned recently is that how do you replace being scared to being excited? So instead of it's like, I'm afraid of this and is that, actually I'm excited about it. And I heard that by just seeing that you're excited alone, psychology said by just mentioning it, your body position shifts totally, your mindset changes totally. And all of a sudden, you're feeling that you're doing something, you're excited about it, you're excited about the process. It's not more or less like you want to learn, you want to get involved. Like you're getting an interview, I feel like an imposter, but I'm excited about this interview. Oh, I'm looking forward to how it will go. Oh, actually, I want to see what would happen. Oh, okay. Oh, maybe for example, you have the opportunity to see maybe like a president, or you see maybe a former UN Secretary General. Oh, actually, I'm excited to meet Ban Ki-moon. It would be interesting to actually sit with him and ask those questions that I've been wanting to ask. Actually, oh, I'm scared, Ban Ki-moon. Oh, I don't think I can talk to him. I don't think I've done this enough. I don't, and then that shifts the whole trajectory. But by just like switching a seemingly negative thought into a positive one, by saying that you're afraid you're going to die, I'm messed, to like, I'm excited about this thing. I'm excited about this process. I'm excited about this. It then shifts your brain entirely. So maybe practicing that, I don't think it might work immediately, but I think there's something about feeling excited. When I was going for my like traveling interview, I was like, there was an excitement that I felt. I'm like, yeah, I'm here. I'm feeling excited about this. I'm glad. Same thing with my Mastercard Foundation Scholars Program interview, even job interviews. I would go. I'm like, it's good to be here. I'm excited. I feel good to be here. I enjoyed listening to everybody, and I'm really looking forward to contributing to this role. I can't wait to be part of this organization. I think I've read about the values of the organization, and I think it aligns with the value that I have. Like I've gone to interviews like that where I would just enjoy myself, literally. By the virtue of just being excited. So I just wanted to also like add that to the mix as well.
Thank you so much. We can spend the whole day, you
Mhm.
and I, talking and talking. But I think before we wrap up, I'll just give you a few minutes just to share any other last thoughts, because I know you have a million of things, so
Mm.
that we can wrap it up and then we can release these amazing people.
Um, mm, I would say that focus on your process. I think it's very important. I think in today's world, there is this idea of like comparison every time. The only person you should compare yourself with is you, and it's with who you are today, yesterday, not somebody else's one. That's the person you should compare yourself with, because I think there's this idea of like when a lot of people are sharing their wins, we want to start comparing and start, being on that zone. I think you should compare yourself with yourself. Are you improving every single day? Are you getting better every single day? In the least, in the smallest possible ways. Are you growing? So pay attention, always pay attention to the process. I think there's something that happens that, especially in our career and in our journey, that when we'd always have to see the outcome, that, is the failure you always see, but you don't see your win. It blocks, you don't see your process, rather, it blocks you from winning. It blocks you from seeing an abundance, because your brain shuts down immediately. You're thinking that, well, everybody's winning and I'm the one failing, and you've not forgotten that actually you've improved over time. And by looking at that, there's something it does to you, that it changes your perspective in a way. It allows you to see the abundance in the world. And it's the same thing with people who says that opportunities, maybe opportunities that end at 35, that if you're already above 35, you can get an opportunity again, because or if there's some opportunity that ends at 30. And one of the things that I've said to myself is that so far I keep living, I would continue to be wondrous. I will continue to be, and I will continue to become. There's always an opportunity to be better. So far I keep living. So far I'm alive, it will be better tomorrow. And the truth is that my opportunity would come, and there's opportunity for every age. So by saying that opportunity ends at 35, what you're doing is that you're shutting down your brain from other opportunities that are available to you, and from spaces that are available to you, that even your own experiences, when you bring them together, you can get into a space where you'll be there as a mentor, a speaker, and you'll be paid for it. So it's now focusing on that, like the abundance in the world, that even though the world is difficult, even though they are cutting funding, yeah, even though they are saying that this thing is going to die, you would always find your own path because of who you are, and because of your being, and because of your process. So rather than focusing on something that you can't control, or rather than focusing on the outcome, focus on your process and focus on your journey, and let the win be the byproduct of that work you're doing and of that process.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to have you. And I'm very certain that this is just one of the best conversations we are going to be having. We'll find another time where we can persuade you as well to come for us to have a chat. It was an honor to have you here. I'm also seeing that people are excited on the chat. So thank you so much. This is where we're going to stop our streaming today, and looking forward to more of these conversations.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yes, the streaming has stopped. Ah.